Hey everyone, I'm Chef Scott for Devil's Food Kitchen. Today's video comes by request from Norma in Cary, Durham, North Carolina. Norma has requested a little bit of a kitchen tour. She says she's always wondering what's going on behind me here, what all of this stuff is and what I use it for. And I think that is a fantastic idea. Norma, thank you for writing in and requesting this. Let's get into what I've got here, what my kitchen's all about, why I organize it, and the stuff I use. Come on. So let's start with this big shelf of tools that's right behind me every time I'm working. My whole philosophy with organizing my kitchen or like my studio, I don't like to open up a box or have to reach into a drawer to get something. I want everything to be like out and open and easy to grab. So that's kind of the idea here, is that everything is pretty much accessible. I don't really have a lot of stuff that's behind something else. If I do, because I only have so much shelf space, those are things that I don't really use that much, you know, tools that are a little less common. All of my really common stuff is up front. This is just like a storage rack, and then I purchased melamine shelving that I cut to size and put on top, because if you've ever used these wire racks, they're really sturdy, but things kind of don't sit flat in them. They fall in between the wires. So by putting this sheet of melamine, it displaces weight really well, and then you can set anything on it. You know, you just have like a flat shelf. So I have my bulk parchment paper here, as well as acetate sheeting. That's plastic sheeting, which I use for chocolate work, any sort of chocolate decoration. I have beat up sheet pans because sometimes you need it for whatever you need a beat up sheet pan for. I don't know, you need them, so I have some. And then some wire cooling racks as well. Here are all plexiglass sheets. So these are thick. These are like 1/4 inch plexiglass. So I use that for chocolate work. Rolling pins and guides here. I like to make or use rolling pins that are PVC pipe. These are for plumbing, so they're food safe. They're super cheap. They come in a lot of different diameters, and now you can even buy them in a 2-foot length, which is a perfect rolling pin length, so that's great. I have an actual rolling pin here. I like these just straight non-tapered French pins. None of that like old-timey handle and rod pin, because those get loose, they bend, they break. Tapered rolling pins can feel a little awkward, and this has just like great touch to it, so I prefer this. Plastic casting bars. These are great for casting a layer of chocolate or ganache to a very specific depth. They come like 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, so I've got a bunch of those. This guy is a wallpaper scraper, again from a home store. I use this for chocolate, so I use it in combination with these bars. I set 2 bars of the same thickness down on a table, on a surface like this plastic, this plexiglass. I cast my chocolate, and then I use this to scrape it across those 2 bars. Everything's super flat, super even. So super handy. Everything's super. Here I've got all of my really common use tools. So spatulas and whisks are right up front. I have a whole bunch of ice cream dishers. These are great for portioning out batter or dough, so I have them in all different sizes. This is kind of like my container of somewhat miscellaneous tools that I still use a lot. Things like my microplanes, my zesters, my ruler that I always use, my pastry brushes. I think having a big hamburger spatula is really, really useful. All of this surface area means it's easy to pick up like delicate cakes and things like that without them falling all over the place. So I think these are great to have. I do have tweezers. I'll use these for detail work. I don't use them to plate every element on a plate of dessert. That's actually a huge pet peeve of mine. Life existed before these, okay? And I've got tweezers, they're my fingers, but sometimes these are really, really useful. And then I have these little third containers, and these are great size to hold little pieces of tools. So I've got all of my piping tips here. This is kind of a work in progress. I'm thinking of something similar to like a router bit organizing drawer, but again, for a rainy day sometime. Bench scrapers and bench cutters. I use these for all kinds of stuff. You know, dough scraper, bench scraper, super versatile in a kitchen. And then this container, that's gonna stay there for now. This container has spoons. You can never have enough spoons, and then a lot of different sized melon ballers, which are also really, really useful for things. So I have all different kinds of melon ballers, and then a lamb for scoring bread, also important. Behind, I have A spray bottle, which comes in handy, you know, whether I'm spraying egg wash or water for chocolate work or something like that. You never know. Spray bottles are really cheap too. My blowtorch, another really important pastry tool. I like the kind with the adjustable head. This one you need to turn the dial to actually get gas to make it go. But then you can turn it down to a really, really low flame, which is super useful if you're knocking out air bubbles in a glaze or for sugar work. So the adjustable head is definitely the way to go. Just my stick blender, this regular hand blender. This one's Cuisinart. I spent, I don't know, maybe $40 on this guy, and I've had it for years. So I just don't think it's worth it to get anything too expensive. These are fine. And then way back there is my sauce gun. These are expensive, but if you're doing precise casting of anything like creams or jellies or anything like that, it's really, really useful. You can just put all of your product in there, and it has a spring-loaded cap and a nozzle at the bottom, so you can be really precise with how much of something you put into various molds or whatever you might be using. Working our way down the shelf, we've got a bunch of baking pans and storage pans. Here I've got a bunch of tart rings, different varieties, some fluted, some straight, pie tins, things like that, and my springform bake pan. Cake turntable, the nice kind, the kind that's metal with the cast iron base. Don't go with the plastic ones. They're so cheap. They wobble all over the place. They're just such a pain to use. The nice one is worth the money for sure. Baking beans that I just keep here for when I need to blind bake something. In the back, I've got ISI canisters. These, you just put liquid in the container and then charge them with CO2. You shake it up and it basically creates an instant foam. I have my Vitamix blender here and a little small food processor back there. I've got a larger food processor also, but for really small recipes, I like just breaking that guy out so I don't have to take apart and clean the larger one. And then ice cream maker here from Cuisinart. This is just a home version. I think it does a pretty good job. I've used a couple home versions and I like this one a lot. And then down here I have all of my silicone molds, flexi pans, different small shapes, custom shapes, all kinds of crazy stuff. A whole bunch of full sheet pan Silpats, so non-stick baking mats, more flexis, and down here really custom stuff. I've got some vinyl that I use for sugar work and then really one-off custom molds down there. I don't use that stuff a lot, but you just never know, so I keep it around. If the big rack is all of like my practical everyday stuff, this is my specialty rack, and that's why now we have boxes, because these are things that I don't use enough to just have out, so they go into the box. I like using the Sterilite container system. I just have all these different size boxes. They all have labels, so I know what's inside. It's really organized and an easy way to keep all of these different little tools for all these different projects, you know, where they need to be. I've got all kinds of stuff up here. I've got air compressor for airbrushing, all of my airbrush parts, various cutters, because you end up with round cutters and fluted cutters and square cutters and shapes, and you need a box for all that stuff. I've got a bunch of sharpening stone equipment because I sharpen all my own knives. I've got a video on that if you want to check it out. Like various carving tools for carving chocolate or for doing fondant or gum paste work, any of that kind of like fine cake decoration stuff. Luster powder, because I just seem to have a million bottles of luster powder. Lots of colors and extracts, all kinds of custom stuff. Acetate and cheesecloth, small flexi molds. So I use these a little bit more than the stuff on the other rack, because when I'm making recipes for all of you guys, the yield is usually with the smaller flexi pan rather than like the full sheet production style. This is just a container of stuff I use for all of my decorative chocolate work. So it has laser thermometer and scrapers for tempering. It's got cotton swabs and cold spray and all the stuff you need to do chocolatier type stuff. And then below that are a bunch of my chocolate molds. Egg molds for Easter, because I love making chocolate Easter eggs. A champagne bottle mold that I think I got that like 15 years ago, and I cannot recall ever making a chocolate champagne bottle. Maybe one time, I don't know, but I've got it. So, you know, when I get that call next week that I need a chocolate champagne bottle, I'm set. So down here is all of my sugar work stuff. And for any of you guys who were wondering if I'm going to show some sugar techniques, yes, I will be. Don't worry, those videos are coming. This is all the stuff that I use to make my sugar stuff. I have here a Lazy Susan. This is just the interior component that you would then put and build your own Lazy Susan on. This is a Chef Donald wrestle trick. Chef Donald is the corporate chef for Guitar Chocolate and a unbelievably talented all around human being. This is awesome because you can set this on the table and then you put your showpiece on top and you can turn it really nice and smoothly and work on it from all sides. So it's a brilliant idea. This beauty is my heat lamp. It's a Hatco Glow Ray. And then all of my little tools, you know, oven gloves and blowtorch heads, latex gloves, sugar color, all the stuff for cooking sugar. Don't worry, I'm gonna bust this out when we do a sugar cooking video. Okay, we're going up there next. Here's the wall that you can just see on the right side of me in all the videos. We'll start with this custom knife rack that I made. I hate having to go into a drawer to get something, and that's especially true with knives. I love having all of my knives out on the wall, ready to just grab and use. This might be one of my favorite things in my studio. So it mounts to the wall and it's on a ratchet system. So when you pull a piece of paper towel off, it holds, and you can just really easily pull paper towel off. For anyone who works in a kitchen, that was probably super satisfying. Like, to have a good version of this is crucial. I took a piece of pegboard from a home improvement store and just mounted it to the wall. And then I'm using like hardware hooks, and they come in all different shapes and sizes to hold all of my rings. Cake rings, I've got kind of small format cake rings. These would be more like European style, 2-inch tall, basically. And these are the larger, more American format, like for a big cake. Little cake rings and tart rings for petit gâteaux or little mousse cakes, whatever that might be. Up here, I've got my Tamis sifter, and behind that is a half cake frame that I use. And then a mandolin, which still to me is like the most dangerous, terrifying tool in a kitchen. I mean, I've got a wood shop full of power tools. That scares me more. Anytime you are forcing your hand towards a razor sharp blade, I feel like it's warranted to be a little concerned about it. And I've also cut myself really bad on those, so that's part of it. So now we are in an area that you have never before seen on video. This is a DFK exclusive. Here I've got 2 more racks. This is really part of more production tools. I've got my plastic wrap and my microwave here. You can't see it too well down here, but I have paper cones and plastic piping bags and all the kind of dry paper goods that you need at a moment's notice. This is what I use to plate all of my photos. Anything that you've seen on the blog or on my Instagram account, it's coming from right here. So I've got a lot of different options. I'm always looking for new dish when I'm out. You can never have enough of that either. I mean, apparently I can never have enough of anything because this place is like full to bursting. On the other side of the screen that you've never seen before are my ingredients, and they're kind of in order of the frequency of use. So up here you have all of your major flours and sugars. I like using these pop tops because they come again in a ton of different sizes. And this is really like nice airtight way to store any of your product. A ton of different flavors and vanilla. This is all Nielsen Massey. I really love Nielsen Massey's vanilla. So I've got every variety that they make. And then down below is some of the stuff that I don't use as much. Things also that I can't put into one of these nice pretty containers, so I don't want to look at it as often. It goes down there. And then at the very bottom, I have all of my chocolates. There's one more place that I almost forgot to show you guys, and that is underneath my work table. I've got my pots and pans, my trusty gram scale, the cutting board I use for every recipe, and then half Silpats, half parchment paper, and half and quarter sheet pans. So I've got everything within easy access to just reach down and grab. That concludes the DFK kitchen studio tour. Over here, you know what's going on. Over there, you know what I've got. I hope it answered some questions, Norma, about what's going on behind me and what I use all this stuff for. If you still have any questions, don't hesitate to email or comment. I'm happy to answer them. That's what all of this is really about. I hope you guys enjoyed this behind the scenes video. If you did, consider subscribing. If you are a subscriber, thanks. And don't forget to turn on notifications so that you know when there are new DFK videos. Until next time, I'm Chef Scott for Devil's Food Kitchen.